He said, why do I have to clean my room? Do you think Jesus had to clean his room? So I want to tell you, this isn't your child. And this isn't just because your kid wants to be an animator, cartoon, comic book writer.
Right.
This is a universal. 8th grade dilemma.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am so excited because today is a special Q&A episode with none other than Rinella. I am so excited. It has been months. I mean, like since 2024. That was a long time ago.
It was a very long time ago.
It was so long ago since we've been together on the podcast because we've been hosting our own podcast. And so this is the first time we've recorded in the new year.
This is the first time we've recorded together since we made the announcement that we're not going to record together.
Which was like, weeks and weeks before Christmas.
Yeah.
I know. It's been too long. So
I've missed you.
I know. I've missed you. And I know our audience has missed us because they've told me.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
We have gotten a lot of messages and people are loving the new format with all the different hosts. But people miss hearing us together. And so I'm excited this is a, like just this week, we're here.
We're back, people.
We're back, people. Every several months, there's a 5th week in the month. And so on that 5th week, Abby and I will be back together.
Yes.
And we'll probably do Q&A most of those times, or if we just have something else exciting to talk about. But this is it. This is like a one-shot episode.
We're the fab 5th week.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right?
I like that. And this is going to be like an hour-long episode.
Yeah. You know why it's going to be an hour? Because Garrett's like, there's no way you and Yvette could talk for 30 minutes. You guys have never been able to talk for only 30 minutes.
He said that. We were just going to do a 30-minute Q&A. And he's like, that's not even possible. You guys cannot answer questions in 30 minutes.
It's true.
And we got a lot of questions in. We went out to you guys. We went to our audience and said, hey, send us your questions. And you guys did not disappoint. You totally delivered those questions. And so Abby and I have had a great time going through them, talking through them, and we're excited to answer those for you today on this special episode with Abby and I. But before we do, I want to say thank you to today's sponsor, Apologia. You guys, we are so grateful for Apologia and for all of our sponsors. Without them, we would not be able to do this podcast. And we love Apologia. We love their curriculum. They are an important part of our homeschooling. So if you are looking for trusted homeschool resources to support your child's education with a strong biblical worldview, check out apologia.com. For decades, they've been a go-to resource for Christian homeschool curriculum designed to educate, inspire, and build a lifelong love of learning. And you can do self-paced courses. You can do live classes. They have great instructors. Their textbooks are amazing. Everything that they have is from a solid biblical worldview, and we absolutely love them. And we love the family behind them, Davis and Rachel Carmen. You guys know Rachel is one of my favorite people, and they stand behind their product. Check them out today at apologia.com and discover how they can help your family thrive. Well, we are so excited to get to your questions. But before we do, I just want to remind you again, for those who may not have heard, and where there's only a few weeks until this event, but Garrett and I are going to be at the Teach Them Diligently convention in Branson, Missouri, May 15th through 17th. And it's going to be a great conference. We are so excited. We are not speaking there. We are just going to hang out. Honestly, I just told Garrett, I said, I just want to go hang out and be encouraged and talk to people and meet people. And I'm still in the thick of it. I still love going to workshops. You would think I would be kind of tired of it by now, but I'm not. I love the encouragement. So I'm going to go to workshops and I'm going to go look through the vendor hall and all of that. But we are going to be hanging out for a good part of the weekend at Ginger Hubbard's booth. So we would love to meet you. If you are a listener and you are going to be there, we would love to meet you while we're there. They have a great lineup of speakers. Heidi St. John, Ken Ham, Ginger Hubbard, of course. And many, many others are going to be there. So it's May 15th through 17th. They have conferences also in Dayton, Ohio, Pigeon Forge, and at Liberty University. So you can go to any of those, but we will only be in Branson. So if you are going to be there, please, please, please come and talk to us. And if you have not yet purchased your family pass, you can get $25 off by using the code SR for Schoolhouse Rock. $25 off, use code SR, and you can get those at teachthemdiligently.net. That's where you can sign up. Anyway, all right, Abby, let's get into our questions because these are so fun. You guys did such a great job sending these questions in.
And if you have questions after this, send them still.
Yes.
Because we want to collect them for the next fifth week, fifth week. Or
yes.
something.
And I actually don't know that we'll get to all of them today because we got a slew of questions in. So if we don't get to them all, we will be back
We will.
shortly, and we will answer the rest of the questions. But you can go to schoolhouserocked.com/feedback and submit your questions there. You can also submit if you have ideas for shows that you would like us to talk, topics you want us to talk about, or guests that you would like us to have on, you can put that in there as well. And we do our best to meet your needs. That's why we're here. So go to that schoolhouserock.com/feedback. I was going to say backslash because it's feedback. Schoolhouserock.com/feedback.
Oh my goodness.
I know all the slashes, forward
All the
slash,
slashes.
backslash. Anyhow, okay. So here's our question. And I'm going to tell you guys, okay, this is Abby. Okay. Abby went to schoolhouserock.com/feedback and she submitted a form. And when it asked the question, you know what her question was? She said, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I was like, Abby, seriously,
But
does anyone actually know?
Did you know it was me?
Not when I first read it, but I knew it was someone messing with me.
Because I tried to let you know it wasn't me, but I wanted you to get some good questions for the show. And that is a good question. It's universal.
It is a good question.
It spans time. It spans gender. It spans ethnicity. Like everybody wants to know.
Right. And I don't think that question has ever actually been answered.
All right. Sorry to disappoint.
I don't know. I mean, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make any noise? I don't know.
Good question.
Actually, I do know. It would make noise because I've actually seen a tree fall and it makes noise. So
wait, what? But then, but the whole thing is that if you didn't see it, would it make noise?
Yeah. Yes.
If no one was there to hear it, would it make noise? It is true.
It would absolutely make noise.
I agree with you. I concur. Yeah. Next question.
Next question. Okay. The next question we have comes from Malia, and this is a great one. She says, how do I motivate an 8th grader for school? The questions I get are, why do I need to know history, science, math, etc.? I want to be an animator, cartoon, comic book writer. That is a fantastic question.
Malia, I have to tell you this. My son just said to me.
Tell me.
Okay. He said, why do I have to clean my room? Do you think Jesus had to clean his room? So Malia, I want to tell you, this isn't your child. And this isn't just because your kid wants to be an animator, cartoon, comic book writer. Right. This is a universal 8th grade dilemma. How to motivate an 8th grader, not just for school, but for life.
In life in general.
So we want to tell you that you are not alone. And I've just heard this too shall pass because I had an 8th grader that's no longer an 8th grader and it passes. It really does pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile,
your son is in 8th grade this year, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So is Lacey. So we both have 8th graders this year.
So
we're right there with you, Malia.
We are with you. Moment of silence for 8th grade parents.
Let me just say real quick. I'm going to plug a podcast episode that we did. It was back in 2024. And that was with Cindy West. And we talked about homeschooling middle schoolers. I will link to that. But if you missed that, go back and listen to that episode because that one was so good. And she really hit on this age group of middle schoolers and why they ask all the questions. And part of it is just the world that they're in, their way their minds are starting to form their own ideas. And they're asking all the questions, not just about why do they have to know history, science, and math, but why do I have to clean my room? Why do I have to do the dishes? Why do I have to mow the lawn? Why do I have to obey you? Why do I have to obey God? And these are oftentimes, I think, good questions for them to ask because they actually want to know the why of these things. And
and you know what?
Usually
That's a valid
there's a good
question.
why.
Right. Because why do I have to learn history, science, and math if I'm going to be an animator? I mean, that is a valid question.
Totally.
So it doesn't, we always take it as a challenge, like they're challenging me.
Yeah.
But they in a sense are, but they're also genuinely, they're trying to make the connections. Tell me why. Right. And we as the homeschool families get to give our kids the why. And that's what they don't in public school. It's just that do this. It has no connection to life. You're just going to do the worksheet and move on. And we get to make the connections to life because without a connection to life, it's empty, right? And so I would say the answer is when you're doing life with your kid and history, science, or math come up, like, I mean, they come up every single day. You're going to see math in everything. Then you need to be like, hey, this is math. This is math. And so, you know, when you're cooking, when you're going to the grocery store, when you're driving the speed limit, your 8th grader, it probably their biggest thing they want to do right now is drive, right?
Yes,
and that and that takes math and it takes science. I mean, how fast a car goes and how fast it's going to hit the car in front of it if you don't put the brakes on, 8th grader.
Right.
So I think that you can connect those things to life Even if you can't connect them to being an animator. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It does. But yes, it's a question I have actually pondered myself quite often as I have been educated myself, as I've educated my girls. I have asked the question because I remember, of course, Brooklyn asked the question, in high school, Mom, why do I have to know algebra 2? I'm never going to use it. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Right. You will probably never use algebra 2. Pre-algebra, yes. Algebra 2, it depends on what your job is going to be.
Totally.
And so these are valid questions that they're asking. But when you look at every subject in its like general context, and even starting with art, I mean, if he wants to be an animator and a cartoon artist and a comic book writer, as he even looks at art, he has to understand, and this is a great way for you, Mom, to point him back to God as creator, because God, our creator, is the one who made us creative, right? Because we're made in his image. And so God is the designer of all things. I mean, he designed color and shapes and nature and people and animals. He designed all of those things. Like you just look at the color wheel and you look at how many different colors there are. You've got your main basic colors. What are those called again?
Your primary color?
Primary, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you haven't done kindergarten in a long time.
It's been a long time. You've got the primary colors, but all of those primary colors, you mix them together and you can make the most incredible, beautiful colors. You look at sunsets, you look at the rainbow, you look at everything.
Those are called secondary colors. Yvette.
Secondary. Thank you, Abby. Abby has been educated. She has a college degree in education.
In kindergarten.
Right, in elementary education. Yeah. So you remember those things.
That's my jam.
As a creator himself, he can see that God is the one who created him in his image that way. But then even looking at other subjects, like you look at history, and history is the story of humanity. It's God's story. And so I was thinking about that quote, those who, it's by George, I think Santayana, I'm not even sure how to say his last name, but he says, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Yes.
And if we don't know the past, we're going to repeat it. And that could be both good and bad, right? Sometimes good things have happened in the past and we want to repeat those things, but oftentimes really bad things have happened in the past and we don't want to repeat the past because we see the pain that it's brought to the world, to humanity. Right. So history is important because it's God's story of humanity. Science, of course, I mean, that is the most, I won't say the most important, but it's so important to teach science from a biblical worldview and for our kids to learn science because it helps them to understand God as creator and to understand his creation. So whether we're studying astronomy or the human body or plants or whatever it is, it all points them back to Jesus. And so science is important for that. Math is one that I always was like, why do we need math? I don't love math. But the more I understand about math, the more I understand, of course, that God is a God of order, not a God of chaos. Right. And so we need to understand math. We need to understand how to read so we can read God's word. We need to understand how to write so we can write about him. So language arts is important for those reasons. Even as an animator and an artist, he needs to know how to write about his Savior and read about his Savior. And so every subject that we teach our kids should be an avenue to pointing them back to their creator.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And also, like, then you could take it to, a comic book writer will need a business, and a businessman. I mean, if you're going to sell comic books, you're going to need to know math to sell those comic books, right?
Right.
I also think there's been times in math with my kids that they're like, when am I ever going to need this? And I'm like, honestly, never. But the challenge with this is it isn't so much the math, it's the figuring out how to figure out something that's hard, right? And you may never remember the exact thing, but it's the lesson on this is hard. There's an unknown that I don't understand and I can figure it out. I can work at it because God has given me with the brain to be able to do it, right? And it grows your brain. So there's a lot of connections and it's your job, Mom, to help them make the connections, right?
Yeah.
And then you may get to a point where they're like a junior and there's like upper level chemistry and you're like, you're never going to need this. And so unless you need it to get into whatever you want to do, then it's okay that we don't learn this. I mean, people might string me up for saying that, but there are certain things that I'm like,
sure,
I would rather spend this time teaching you things that ignite your passion for learning than things that I can honestly say you are never, ever, ever going to need this.
Right.
Unless God has a career for you to do it and then you'll learn it.
Right.
You'll want to, you'll desire to.
Yeah.
So,
and usually by the time they get into high school,
you'll know that.
They'll know what they're passionate about. You'll know what they're passionate about. And then you can, really dive into those things specifically. So
like, I am not going to force my junior that's a boy, if he is really not wanting to read Shakespeare, he's been exposed to stuff. I'm not going to make him, I'm just not,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the greatest blessings of homeschooling, though, is that we get to know our kids. We know what their bent is. We know how God created them. And then we can cater their education to them specifically. And that can't be done in a classroom. And so we have a great privilege to do that. And also, you may have state standards that you have to abide by, and certainly abide by those standards.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, don't feel like just because the public school is doing a certain math level or science curriculum or history, don't feel like you have to stick specifically to what everyone else is doing.
For sure.
Do what your kid enjoys.
Yes.
And if he wants to be a comic book writer, he's got to learn to write anyway.
He does.
But history and science and math can come into that as well. And so,
well, of course, comic books, like humor in comic books, they draw from things in the past. Like that's what makes things fun, know?
Yeah.
Connect those things to him being a comic. I think you need to connect those subjects to what he wants to do. And then he'll desire to learn it because it's connected to what he loves.
Right.
This is why we can't spend 30 minutes answering questions.
Right. You're right. I want to say one more thing on this though, too. I wouldn't use it to your advantage and just say, hey, these other subjects are important. We still have to study history and science and math for these reasons so that that you can know God better. But why don't you spend the first half of the day animating and drawing your cartoons and drawing your comic books? Or do those things.
Why
learn
can't
them
you
through history.
animate
if you're reading, that's what I'm trying to say, Abby.
Yeah, I'm going to just say it for you.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're reading history out loud to him, then let him animate as you're reading it.
Absolutely.
If you're reading science to him, let him animate that science as you're reading it to him. Let him create that. As you're studying those things with him. So, good stuff.
Good stuff.
So good.
We're going to get through the 8th grade years together.
We are. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Homeschooling is a big responsibility. With BJU Press, you can feel equipped to give your children not just an education, but a foundation for life. Children learn in different ways, and BJU Press lets you adapt to their unique learning styles. And you'll love the community of other homeschool moms who use BJU Press. They've been where you are, and they're full of advice, encouragement, and practical tips. And when you need even more help, there's the Homeschool Hub, which keeps families organized with easy lesson planning, calendars, and even grading tools. To learn more, visit bjupresshomeschool.com.
All right, on to the next question, because we could go on and on about subjects, but let's try to get through these. All right, our next question is, how do you know you're doing enough in your homeschooling? I love that question, and it's one that I think every single homeschool mom asks herself.
Yep. And I would say usually the mom that asks that is already doing enough, right?
Yeah.
Those are usually the moms that are doing too much and they need to maybe back off a little bit. That's usually what I find. The mom that asks that is usually already doing more than enough.
Right. Yeah, because she's thinking through, know, what needs to be done. Again, kind of going back to what we were answering before, don't lock yourself into what everyone else is doing.
Yep.
And feel like if you're not doing this, and this, you're not doing enough. That is
totally
the danger of sometimes co-ops and social media and doing, looking at all the other families and you feel like a failure because it seems like everyone else is doing all of the things and they're doing field trips every week and they're teaching their kids to cook and they're teaching their kids to sew and they're teaching them to garden and they're teaching them all the things. And you're like, I'm not doing most of that stuff. And so you feel like you're failing sometimes.
Right.
Don't feel that way. Don't compare.
Trap, usually.
Exactly. Don't compare yourself to others. As far as if you're doing enough, well, they're pretty good. I'm saying don't look at standards, but you do, if you're concerned about whether or not you're doing enough, you can look at like what the average 8th grader is doing or what the average middle schooler or what the average high schooler is doing and kind of gauge what your student is doing in, relation to that. So,
and I would say not on a day-to-day basis, on a year-to-year basis,
yes,
right?
yes,
I
yeah,
wouldn't say, are you doing math, language arts, science, social studies, and all these other things every day? I would say
right.
in any given year, are your kids growing academically in
Yeah.
the core subjects? And then are you also making time for them to pursue their passions and their,
Right.
the other things
Right.
over the course of a year? That's what I would
Right.
say, right?
Right. Yes. And you have to remember it's not all about the academics. It's
Correct.
also a huge part of homeschooling is about the relationships. It's
Yep.
about, serving in your church or at your local
Yep.
pregnancy center. It's about sometimes playing sports. If you've got an athlete,
Yep.
it's, I mean, it's, if you have an artist, it's taking art classes and learning from others,
Right.
the skills that your kids want to learn.
But
I
it's
mean,
not doing all of it all the time, right?
right.
It's being able
Yes.
to just know overall, if I look from this point last year to this point this year, have we grown
Right.
in the majority of those areas?
Right. Right. Exactly. And we've talked about this a lot of times on the podcast, but from whatever point you're at, if you're in the early elementary years, or even if you're in the high school years, you have to look at what your end goal is with your kids
Right.
and then work
Mhm.
backwards. So where
Yep.
do you want to be? Where do you want your kids to be when they leave your home? When they
Right.
are adults and you hand them your homeschool diploma and you
Right.
said, okay, I've done everything that I can do. I've done my very best. Here's where we want our kids to be in the end.
And not just
Move,
academically, but
not just, right, not
life,
just academically.
spiritually,
Right.
relationally,
Exactly.
all of
Yes.
those things.
Yep. Yep. And then work backwards from there. And,
Right.
that's what I've tried to do with my girls. And it's not like you have this perfect blueprint and formula that's going to work out exactly as you want, but at least you have goals. It's that GPS that we're using. You've got to know where your destination is in order to know how to get there. So look at what your destination is. Where do you want your kids to be? Where do you want your family to be when they turn 18, when they leave your home, maybe at the age of 20 or 25, where do you want them to be? And then work back from there. So, but just don't compare to everyone else, because that's a really easy thing to get caught up in.
Always make you feel like you're never doing enough, right?
Yes, every
That's a
time.
sure way of knowing.
Yes, yes, and I think the enemy does that on purpose to make us feel like we're not enough. So let's just put them back in school because the experts will do a better job of it, and they will not.
Goodness. They will not.
They're your kids. You will do the best job.
You are the expert.
Training them up. That's right. You are the expert for your children. So I hope that was encouraging, Amanda. All right. So this next one is, I think Cherie is how you say it. Maybe Sherry, but I think it's Cherie, the way it's spelled. And she says, my soon-to-be 13-year-old daughter is looking for teen books to read over this summer. Do you have any suggestions? Well, as
Cherie,
a matter of fact, we do.
Yes. And you just hit like our love language talking about books. Like that's
and we both
our
have
love language.
had 13-year-old daughters.
Yes, it's true. And we both been 13-year-old daughters, and we both love to read.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I started,
first?
I'll go first. I started pulling books from my bookshelf, and then I was like, okay, this could take a really long time.
This is a whole episode.
So I'm going to narrow it down to, like, if I were stranded on an island and I could only choose 5 books to take with me, what books would I take? So these are the books that I feel like for myself and my girls have been enjoyable to read. There's so many that are going through my head, but I'm going to give you some resources too. The ones that have been most enjoyable and most impactful for us are The Hiding Place. I think both of my girls have read The Hiding Place.
Yep.
I've read it probably 5 or 6 times. My girls have both read it at least 2 or 3 times.
And I would say that's one to read with her. Honestly, I think it'd be so good to read with her.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's
there's some heavy
stuff in there. Yes, it's true. But I would say I wouldn't read The Hiding Place below middle school. I feel like middle school is the perfect time to start reading The Hiding Place. I wouldn't read it earlier than 7th grade for sure. And if you have a very immature 7th grader or 8th grader, I would maybe wait till high school to read it. It's all about the Holocaust, and it is tough to read sometimes, but man, it's so good. And I call this the Corrie ten Boom trilogy. So The Hiding Place, Tramp for the Lord, which was also written by Corrie ten Boom, and that's her life after the war. And it's so good. And she talks about going out and how she ministered to the world, literally the world, telling about her story of having been in Ravensbrück and just what God did and how he worked in her through her family. And it's just an incredible story. And then there was another one that was written by one of her assistants. Oh, I can't remember her, Pamela, somebody, I think is her name. It's called The 5 Silent Years of Corrie ten Boom. And that is such a good book. I want to say all of them are my favorites. They're not, but once you read The Hiding Place, she could easily read Tramp for the Lord and The Five Silent Years on her own. And they are literally life-changing. And then the other book that I would say is Kisses from Katie by Katie Davis Majors. That book, again, for both my girls and I, was life-changing. And we read that when Brooklyn was probably 12, maybe. I want to say 12 or 13. So Lacey would have been, 7-ish, somewhere around that. So that one could be read to smaller kids, but that's a younger kid would not pick up that book and read it. That book is perfect for a middle school girl. And I know Abby's got a bunch to share, but I do want to share just 2 resources with you. One of them is called Honey for a Child's Heart. And this was written, I want to say probably in the 80s. I don't know. So it's a little bit dated, but I mean, there's just a ton of really great resources in here of books that you can read. And I love what she does is she gives kind of a summary of the different books that she suggests in here. And so these you can start with young kids, and it's a book of books is what it is. But there's also another one written by the same author, Gladys Hunt, and it's called Honey for a Teen's Heart. And so there's Honey for a Child's Heart and Honey for a Teen's Heart. This one for teenagers is fantastic. And again, I love it because it's hard to answer this question because every child has different interests in books. But in this book, she goes through book lists that will help you choose what is good for your child or what they would enjoy. And so there's adventure and suspense. There's contemporary, fantasy, historical, mystery, nonfiction, science fiction, sports. And it is written from a Christian worldview. So I won't say that I agree with every single book that she lists in here because I've obviously not read them all. But you can look at what genre your kids like. And again, it gives kind of a synopsis, a description of what the book is about in here. And then she even gives a guideline for if it's good for early teens, middle teens, late teens, or all ages. And this is just a fantastic resource to have. Again, it's called Honey for a Teen's Heart. So this would be a great resource for her. And we will put links to these all in the show notes. So Abby, what do you have?
Well, you hit it. Hiding Place is hands down one of the best. I think you do need to know your child, if kind of what age to do that one. Another one, if they love that genre, and this is maybe it's kind of in the same, it's called Saving My Assassin. I just read it. It's phenomenal.
You told me about that one.
I know. It is mind-blowing. It's kind of along the same lines. But I would say, and Yvette kind of hit it, that know their genre. I think summer reading for me is just letting the kids pick in their own genre that they love. And if you're having a kid that you want to get into books, let them stick with the genre they love. And then every once in a while, throw something else in. But then if you have like a reader that loves all of it, I kind of have tried to do this challenge of like, I'm trying to read 2 books in each genre because I get stuck in historical or true. So, try a new genre. But there are so many book lists because here's the thing. Once you hit 13, there is no way to pre-read all the books. Like it is impossible, especially homeschool families who have more than one child. And so find the really good book list that you can trust. And one that Yvette and I use a lot is the Not Consumed. If you go to notconsumed.com, she has a book list in there. I think if you sign up and it gets emailed as a PDF, but there is such a phenomenal book list and you can trust the books on there. Now that doesn't mean like that they don't have heavy content, but it's all, if it's heavy, it's like, okay, it's World War II. Cause guess what? World War II is heavy. But there's not going to be inappropriate things. So find good book lists. I love Not Consumed. The other thing you can do is go to like Sunlight. And even though if you're not a Sunlight person, like even if you don't use Sunlight curriculum, you have access to their book lists and you can trust those book lists as well. So, that's what I would suggest. It's so fun. I also think that is such a fun age to read books with your kids. Maybe not, yes, out loud is really fun, but my daughter and I, when she was that age, we read them simultaneously, but separately. Like she would be reading it at night and I would be reading it. And then we could just kind of talk about it or just know we're kind of, in the same place when we're reading. Fun. Yeah. It's fun to do. Yeah. You're in a fun age.
Yes, it is fun. I'm reading Heidi with Lacey right now by Johanna Spyri. I know. So Lacey, I read that to Brooklyn. Again, she was probably 11 or 12. So Lacey was pretty little. She was like 6 when we read that. And she remembers it, but at first she's like, no, we've already read that. And I was like, oh, but it's so good. Sometimes I just want to read it myself. Yeah. And so, because we always have a read aloud. She has a book that she's reading, but we always have a book that we're reading together that I read out loud. And so I said, can we please do Heidi again? So she's like, okay. And it's fun because it's really, I mean, it's been so many years. It's been like 8 years since we read it.
I need to read it. You always tell me, and I'm like, you watch the show and you're like, no. You can't. Watching the movie is not the same.
No, it's not even, it's not. It's like reading Little House on the Prairie versus watching the Little House show. Like there's no comparison. So which Little House too? I mean, if your daughter has not read the Little House series,
those are so fun.
So good.
Yeah.
So much fun. Start with book one and work your way through the whole series. They are so fantastic. And you can listen to those on audio as well. Cherry Jones is one of the people who does the audio version of Little House, and it's fantastic. I love the way she reads. So, so if your daughter likes audiobooks, that's a great one. And even Boys Enjoy. We listened to the entire Little House series while we were traveling, and Garrett enjoyed them as much as my girls did. And he's a grown man.
Pa,
so
I mean, there's a lot in there, and there's I mean, it's life, right?
Yes,
it's life. It's not.
Yeah, they're talking about building their family and building their homes and their journey. So it's incredible. Anyway.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. So that's it for books. We will put those links in the show notes for you, Cherie, so that hopefully that will be helpful for you. Which, by the way, just so you guys know, I'm going to put a little plug here. When we put links in the show notes, most of the time, the links that we put in are somehow attached to some sort of affiliate something or other. And so we get, if you're going to buy them through our link, because we get a little bit of a kickback from that. And that goes to help support the Schoolhouse Rocked ministry. Maybe you didn't know that.
So you feel less guilty when you buy on Amazon.
Right.
Because at least part of it's going to something good.
Yeah. And we have, christianbook.com. We sometimes put links to there. We have an affiliate with them and others as well. Have you tried CTC Math yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, I'm absolutely thrilled with CTC Math. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTC Math, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. All right, this one comes from Bethany, and her question is this. She said, how do you decide when to have a child repeat a subject or grade level the next year? And for students who are ahead of their age, how do you balance keeping them challenged and interested in learning, but not overwhelming them? I have one student who is gifted and talented and picks up on things easily, and another student who struggles in some subjects, but mostly from lack of maturity and discipline, not their ability to learn. And then she said, thanks for the great content and encouragement. Oh, you are so welcome, Bethany. Abby, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I feel like, Bethany, maybe you were a teacher or in the school system, because I used to ask this too. But here's the fun thing about homeschool. Your kids aren't like ahead or behind. They're right where they're supposed to be. So when you said how do you decide to have a child repeat a subject or grade level? Well, first of all, I would say throw out grade levels, because your kids are where they're at. So you aren't going to have to, this is the other really fun thing. You don't necessarily have to repeat, because you don't ever need to move on beyond where they're succeeding at. Does that make sense? So, so you're just going to move at your kid's pace. And if they're in 3rd grade, if they were in the system in 3rd grade, and they're in 1st grade, they're not behind, because they're right where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then also if they're doing 5th grade in another subject, they're not ahead. They're right where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so that's also the other thing is my kids have never been in a grade level that's the same in all subjects. They might be in 4th grade in math and in 5th grade in science. And we just kind of throw out grade levels. And then we move, once they've mastered something, we move forward. And so you don't really have to repeat, or if you're finding that you've passed something and they've missed that, then you can go back. That's how you know when to go back, is if they haven't mastered it. And do you know when to move ahead? When they've mastered it. And so you get to determine the pace. You get to determine where they're at on anything. So the first thing I would say to any homeschool mom, get rid of grade levels.
Yeah.
I would even, honestly, for my kids, I have X'd out the grade levels on the books so they don't even know. Because sometimes kids will be like, if they're 12 and they're in a 1st grade, they're like, why am I in this? Or they get proud. I'm working at an 8th grade level and I just will get rid of it. So they don't know. Here's what we're doing. We're doing math. We're doing math at the level that you're at.
Yep.
And when you're ready to move forward, we move forward. And if you haven't mastered it, we stay where we're at until you've mastered it.
Yeah.
And that's the freedom of, and what you might find is you start to panic because, oh my goodness, we're behind. But then all of a sudden, 1 year, you just went through 2 years of school in a year because they were getting it and they were moving forward. So homeschool is at your pace. It's not based on grade levels. It's not based on what everybody else is doing. And it's not even that everybody's the same grade level in the same subject. You move forward when they're ready. You stay back when they're not.
Yes, I absolutely. You hit it dead on. But I do want to say one other thing too. Your child does, going back to Malia's question at the beginning, and she, her son was asking, why do I have to know science and math and history and all these other subjects? Not every child is created to be the expert in every single subject.
Right.
And so you might have a child who, like Malia's son, wants to be an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he needs to know the basics of math and history and science, again, so that he can understand God and his world that he created. But he doesn't have to be a mathematician. He doesn't have to be a historian. He doesn't have to be a scientist because God created him to be an artist.
Right.
And so, you don't know very many historians who are also scientists or very many mathematicians who are, homemakers. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Maybe there are a lot of homemakers who are scientists and we
are
have to be
authors.
science,
Usually mathematicians are not authors.
Right. That's a better one. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're super good at science, you probably don't enjoy writing novels. And so God has just created each one of your kids to love certain things. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if they are not experts at all of the subjects. And so have them learn the basics of those things and go along with them, but they don't have to. You talked about mastering them, Abby. They don't necessarily have to master every single thing. If they're going to be an engineer, well, they should probably know calculus.
Right.
But if they're not going to be an engineer, they don't need to know calculus. Or if they, if they don't have a career in mind, that requires these things, then it's okay for them to not be the expert on everything.
And honestly, like you said, the only subject that ever you would need to master to move on is math. You do. Like if you can't do addition, you really shouldn't move on. But honestly, think about every other subject. Right. There is no grade level in learning science, right? You learn something in science and then you keep learning it until you're done learning. And you don't need to know any more science. Now, if, like you said, if you're going to be an engineer, you should probably learn, or whatever, a science, you need to learn more science. If you're not, you don't. Yeah. Grade levels and holding back and moving forward, that's all just this thing that we've made up. And so math, I would say, is the one that you need to master before you move on. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Everything else, just do. In fact, I have always said this too, like in the public school, like 4th grade is state history, 5th grade is World War, whatever. Like that's how they've always done it. Or science, it's like in this grade you do biology, in this grade you do chemistry, in this grade you do botany, right? And I've always said, don't ask your kids, what do you want to learn this year? Yeah. So that as long as you get out of school and you have a basic understanding of everything, who cares what order you do it in, right? Yeah. Who cares? Except math.
Yes, because math builds on itself.
Math builds on itself.
Yes. Other
so you got to shake this whole get ahead, get behind who, ahead of who. You just teach to your child where they're at. Yep. And that's the answer.
Yeah, totally. And your kid does not have to finish the worksheet on every single subject that you're putting in front of them. This year, Lacey and I are studying world history, and we've talked before in the past about our kids' learning styles. Well, Lacey, she's my 8th grader. She is an auditory learner. She learns so well by hearing things. Huh. And since she's my only child at home now, I have the time to read to her, and I enjoy it. I love sitting with her and reading to her. So she could open the book. I mean, she's fully capable of that. She knows how to read. She's really good at it. She could open the history text and she could read it on her own. But she would rather I read it to her, and every day she's doing something with her hands. She's either crafting or she's drawing or she's she's now into these like adult coloring books, because they seem more mature. But she's got her colored pencils out. She's doing something. Sometimes it's just a fidget in her hands. And so she will sit while I read to her. And so we had these worksheets and she was doing the worksheets, but they were different than the science work. She enjoys doing the science worksheets and filling in the blanks and answering the questions, but the history ones, for some reason, a couple of weeks ago, she was like, Mom, can we just read? Because she's getting it. I mean, I'm reading it to her and she's totally getting everything I'm reading. She's like, I feel like the worksheets are just taking up too much of my time. So can we just keep just blazing through and reading? I'm getting what you're reading. I don't need to write it down on a piece of paper. And I was like, absolutely.
Totally.
So that's what we've been doing. I read it like a book. And that's working really well for us. And so, you don't have to stick to feeling like, well, I'm doing it wrong, or we're going to have to go back if we didn't finish the whole book or finish all of the worksheets.
160 and we can't move to 161 until 160 is done. And that will suck the life out of you and your kids.
And your child. Yeah. So,
And if they're exhibiting that they know the stuff in one question or talking to you or acting it out or whatever, then move on. You're done. You got it. Right.
I mean, that's the whole point, is so that they know what it is that they're studying.
Right. Not that they can fill out worksheets. Because as an adult, how many worksheets do you fill out on a day?
Yeah,
0.
not very many. But some enjoy. I mean, Lacey loves filling out her science worksheets. Yeah. She finds great satisfaction in it. It does. It does. And she goes back, so his science is just different than history. She goes back to the text and she'll find the answers if she doesn't know them. She fills out what she can first. Totally.
Right.
Yes,
that is a good skill, is learning how to research. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
good.
Anyway, all right. I hope that answers your question, Bethany. Okay, the next one is from Kayla, and this one's quite lengthy. It's such a good question, but I'm just going to kind of grab some pieces out of here so that I don't read the whole thing. Her kids have only ever been in public school, and so first I want to say, Kayla, welcome to the wonderful world of homeschooling. And I think, like every mom, you probably went into it with this fantasy of how wonderful it was going to be and how easy it was going to be. And you were going to be, just singing through the days. And you have quickly learned that that is not always the case. And so welcome. Homeschooling is amazing. It is a blessing, but it is also very, very hard sometimes. And so she says that she has a 12-year-old who's very strong-willed. So for all the strong-willed parents, can I hear an amen? Yep. I've got one of those myself.
Me too.
She has a 12-year-old who's very strong-willed, and it's been, she says, and it's been something that has required determined parenting, which I love that. I love that you have been determined to parent her and to disciple her, and never giving up from a very young age. Now that she's at home so much, it seems that all we ever do is fight. I can feel you on that. That's hard.
Yep.
She said sometimes she becomes disrespectful when she feels like she's being challenged by her parents, and there's lots of fighting, and it's affecting the dynamics and relationship in their home. And that is a really, really hard thing. She's almost 13. And so she's asking for help. She's like, how do I deal with this strong-willed child in my homeschool? And she also talks a little bit about how, when she was in school, all of her teachers were like, she's amazing, why is it that kids do that? When I remember taking my kids to the babysitter, I say babysitter. What I mean by that is grandma and grandpa's house.
Yeah.
When they were little. Or my sister's house, and they would say, they were amazing. They were so well behaved. And I'm like, are we talking about the same kid here? Because I can't even go to the grocery store with this kid right now without tantrums. And so, yes, it is very different when when her teachers are saying, oh, they were amazing, never gave them problems, and now she's home. But it's because she's more comfortable with you. So I will say that is one of the reasons. She's in her comfort zone. She's at home. And so this is a big question. And I would say first, relationship over reading, character over curriculum. You want to build that relationship with her. And if that means you taking the rest of this year and putting aside the academics, I'm not saying do it forever, but put the academics aside and you just work on character and your relationship with her so that there's peace in your home, then you do that. And let her know that. I would say, you know what, daughter, I love you so much. I don't want to fight with you all the time. And I've noticed that when we're doing our academics together, there's always conflict. And so we're going to put academics aside for right now. And if she's someone who is, especially if she's good and she enjoys learning, she's going to want to get back to those academics anyway.
Right.
But just say, we're going to just put these aside for now, whether it's from a week, a month, the next few months. And when I feel like we're at a point in our relationship where we can peacefully learn together, then let's do this again. Let's do it together.
Right.
The strong-willed child is very, very hard because they know what they want. They're going to fight to get their way. It doesn't matter who they run over or who they hurt, but I don't think that they do it intentionally. It's just that's how God made them. And so with our strong-willed, we've told her since the day she was itty bitty and started throwing those tantrums, honey, God gave you this strong will for a purpose, but we need to learn to use it for God's glory and not for your own gain.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is that I was a strong-willed child. Oh man, was I. And I'm a strong-willed adult. And I think I finally realized one day that, you know what, God made me strong-willed. And here's the thing. We live in a world where we need strong-willed people to be able to stand against what's being thrown at them, to be able to stand against the enemy, to be able, it's those strong-willed people that are making a difference in this world. It's those strong-willed people that are willing to stand and say, you know what, I don't care how much pressure comes my way. I'm going to stand for what is right. And I'm going to build up other people around me. They can usually rally the troops, right? And we're going to, they can be, people in legislation. They can be, those people make huge differences. And I think that rather than fight it, you say, listen, like you said, you're strong-willed and praise God. I love that about you. And it is going to, but you have to bring it under the authority of God. Right. All of our greatest strengths can be our greatest weaknesses. And at 12 years old, here's number one, that is a really hard age for her. Yes. We think it's so hard to be parents of that middle school years, but really, it's really hard for them. Their hormones are all over. They're trying to figure out who they are. And then for her to have been brought, her life was changed for the better, Mom. You did the best thing for her. But the reality is it was a lot for her. And so you have to know that part of it is it's the age. Part of it is it's the temperament. But I think with that age and that temperament, you can talk to her and say, you know what, we're bucking and I don't want to buck and you don't want to buck. How do you think that we can work better to ask her, talk to her? She's of that age where you're transitioning, because this isn't child-centered, but you are transitioning her into those adult years where you guys can have more of a communication. You can ask her, what am I doing something that's rubbing you? Am I doing something? Or that question also said, when you're grading her, but she does great with the work, but it's when you're grading. Ask her, what is it about this? Would you like to grade your own papers? Would you rather my grading be that we just talk about it? I think you're at an age where it's not letting her take charge, but it's kind of that working together more, and also just understanding that she's raging inside of herself at 12. Like there's just a lot going on. And so it's not homeschool. I'm telling you, you didn't make a mistake. It's not homeschool. Yeah. This is the best place she can be. And you get to be the steady while she's the storm, right? And so when she starts being the storm and bucking you and all of that, you be the steady. Don't allow disrespect, but try to work together and keep affirming her. This is your strong will. This is a gift from God. How do we bring it under God's authority so that it can be used for good?
Right. Absolutely. Two other things I'll say is one, start every day in God's word. Whatever you do, if you're not sure, if you're not going through a book of the Bible or something like that, I would suggest starting in Proverbs. There are 31 Proverbs. There are typically 31-ish days of the month, 30 to 31. So read a proverb a day, whatever the day of the month is, read that proverb for the day. So, March 19th, read Proverbs 19, because the Proverbs are so full of wisdom and Proverbs have a lot to say about children listening to the instruction of their parents. And so I would start the day out that way. Maybe start the day out with music. Find out what is she passionate about. Maybe you don't even quite know yet. Maybe she doesn't quite know yet. But if you need to take a break from academics and she loves art, have her do art for the next few weeks or the next couple of months. Have her do something that's going to just kind of revive her. But as Abby said, talk with her about it. However, don't do that in the heat of the moment.
No,
we've learned that the hard part. Or we've learned that the hard way. Never, ever, ever try to have these conversations with your child, especially with your strong-willed child, in the heat of the moment. Wait until you're calm. Sometimes that might look like taking them out for ice cream or for lunch or something like that, and then sitting down and having to talk with her and just saying, "Hey, honey, this is not working, but we're going to make homeschool working, and don't ever make it sound like, well, maybe this isn't working so well, so maybe we'll go back to school."
Yeah, that's not.
No, just say this is what our family.
Because what you're telling her is you're getting too hard. I don't want to stay in the battle with you, and so that's not an option. But this is encouraging too. When you said she's so respectful, to parents, or I mean, to the teachers. Here's what this means. She knows, and she knows right from wrong. And what you have done, it's been good. It's just that you're the safe place. So when she is falling apart, or when she's trying to work out, what does it mean to be strong-willed and bring it under the authority of God? They're trying to figure this out at 12.
Yeah.
You're a safe place for her to work that out with.
Yeah.
But the fact is, she obviously knows, because she's treating other people with respect.
Right.
She knows. And so that's encouraging. It's the kid that leaves your home and just is crazy everywhere and is disrespectful to everyone. That's when there's really a problem. So be encouraged.
Yeah. And you can say to her too, when you were in school, your teachers always had amazing reviews about you, and they adored you. They talked about how you were, so respectful and well-behaved. And just say, God, I'm your teacher now. God's made me your teacher. And you can make it personal to say, how do you think it makes me feel when I know that you've treated your teachers so well, but I, your mom, who love you more than anything. And I'm not saying this in a manipulative kind of way, but I'm your mom. I love you more than anyone. Like Abby said, I'm on your side. We are on your team. We're here to help you. It doesn't make me feel nice when you are disrespectful and when you yell at me. It's okay to say that to your kids, because you're a human too. And so it's okay to let them know how you feel. Really quickly, she said, this was at the end of her question. She said, on a side note, she's very involved in a weekly basis with youth group and sports of all seasons, but she tells me constantly that she's lonely. She's also a kid that gets filled up by social interactions. So she's an extrovert, it sounds like. It's great that she's involved in other things. This is just a transition year for sure.
Yes, that's what it
going
is.
From always having been in public school to now she's home with her mom and siblings. That's a really hard transition. And you've only really been at it for a few months. I mean, even, though we're starting to get to the end of the year, we're closing out this year, it still has only been a few months of her life compared to all the many, many months that she's been in school. So it's a transition time.
It is.
Still.
It is.
And so give yourself some grace, give her some grace.
I also want to tell you the loneliness thing. I always say this. I was surrounded by 700 people in a public school, and I've never been lonelier, just because people are around people. Also, God can use the lonely. God can use the lonely to draw her to him. And so don't always be afraid. We always get afraid if our kids are lonely. God can use it. And it sounds like she's not alone, right? You have her active in things. You're doing things with her. So that's important. Like, get them out, get them around people. But sometimes in that age, in that 12, 13, 14, those teen years, you could put them around 800 people and they're still going to feel lonely. Walk into any middle school and you see 400 lonely kids. It's kind of the nature of that season when they're trying to figure out who they are and where they belong. The beautiful thing about homeschool is if they're feeling lonely, they have the Lord, and that's when they can go to the Lord, and they have you. It's a safe place to feel lonely. We're deceiving ourselves if we think that just because kids are around a lot of other kids, they're not feeling lonely. It's just the nature of them and that season. So
yeah, that's right. Well, Kayla, I hope that is encouraging to you. Man, we are out of time.
I know.
We have more questions. I promise you guys, we will get to them. We'll do another Q&A as soon as we can, and we will get to the rest of your questions.
It's
you guys
interesting,
sent in so many good
ones. A lot
ones.
of the questions are worded differently, but they're a lot of the same answers that we're going to give. Like, you know what? Work at your kid's pace. And, just the kind of the answer that we just gave to Kayla could be answered to 500 more questions. It's kind of all the same principles.
Yes.
So hopefully you found your answers in there somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
You can find your answers in the Word of God. I will tell you,
always.
Every question you have, God's Word says it has everything you need for life and godliness. And that includes these really hard homeschool questions, these really hard parenting questions. It's in there. It's in there. And so moms, be in the Word. You've got to be in the Word because you have to be filled so that you can walk these little ones and these big ones through these hard things. Yes, good stuff. Well, we will answer the rest of the questions next time. I wasn't sure how many we'd get to today, but your questions are so good, and we have several more. Again, if you do have more questions for us, you can always fill out our form at schoolhouserocked.com/feedback. And again, for those who didn't remember, maybe you forgot in the last hour,
Our family is going to be at Teach Them Diligently, the Teach Them Diligently Homeschool Convention in Branson, Missouri, May 15th through 17th. And we are super excited. If you happen to be anywhere near Branson, we would love to meet you there. You can get $25 off the family pass with the code SR for Schoolhouse Rocked. And we would love to see you. We will be hanging out with Ginger Hubbard in her booth for a good part of the weekend, so you can find us there. You guys, thank you so much for sending in your questions. Thank you for being with us. We love you guys so much. You can find everything at our website, schoolhouserocked.com. And please take a few minutes to leave a review for this podcast and share it with your friends. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you back here next time. Bye.
You're listening to the Biblical Family Network.
Hey, I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And we're the co-hosts of the Culture Proof Podcast. We want to invite you to join us every week as we discuss what's happening in the world and then filter those happenings through a decidedly biblical lens.
There are many questions, especially when we see what's happening in our culture today, but the answers are found within the Word of God. So that's where we want to look.
Amen. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth,
we remain culture proof.
Instead of pummeling our kids with, man, you need to be a man of courage, you need to be courageous,
Right.
you need to be humble, you need to be this and that. If we can just read stories that demonstrate that, then that's sinking in. So many moms are also writing their own curriculums. So you can get a curriculum for anything all year long, and you can have a stack a mile high and have that pressure like, oh my goodness, this is all this beautiful curriculum. And then they have these homeschool planners, and I've seen them just like by the 15-minute beep, 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 beep.
Oh my goodness.
Like, oh my goodness. And some women operate better that way. I get that.
Right.
And then some just want the freedom of just sit with a stack of books and grab a cup of tea.
Yes.
And take a breath.